Hello there, my name's Joe and welcome to my channel. In this video we're going to take a look at a set of nodes called the Chibi Nodes by their author Chibiace. So what we'll do is we will take a look at the GitHub page for Chibiace and in particular for his Chibi Nodes. We'll then go through how we can install Chibi Nodes and load them onto our workflow. And then we'll take a look at my workflow where I've pulled not all, but most of these nodes up, and I've created 3 groups. So we've got a text to image group, a image resize group, and then we've got a couple of extra little nodes that we can do to adjust images. So we can add text, rotate them, flip them, etc. So we'll look at that too. So let's make a start by looking at the GitHub page. So now we're at the GitHub page for Chibiace. Let's just have a quick run through. So to begin with, if we come up to the top left corner, here we have a link to the profile for Chibiace. There you can see other projects that he's working on. However, we're going to stick to the Chibi Nodes, which is this page here. So if we scroll down, first of all, we're met by this picture here, or diagram rather, which we can click into to get a larger version, and we'll do that in just a minute. And below that, we have a list of most, but not all of the Chibi Nodes, and a brief description of what they do. They don't, mostly they don't include how to use them, just basically what they do. But there are a couple of nodes that give you some extra information. I'm not going to go through the list here, but a couple that I will highlight because they did affect me when I was trying to create my workflows is, let's have a look. If we come down, there is a save images node. And on this you can select different types of file names. Now I had issues with this, with the 2 fixed options that we've got here. We've got a fixed and a fixed singles. Now both of those did not work for me when I tried to output batch files. So the only way I could get this to work was by using the timestamp option. And I'll show that when we come to that. So not a biggie, but I couldn't get the fixed or the fixed single to work for me. They just kept overwriting themselves, but that's by the by. And there was another thing here, the simple sampler. When we get to look at the Chibi version of the K sampler, it is, well, let's see what Chibiace says. So K sampler, but less things to change because it uses presets. What could go wrong? Could possibly be a bad idea and still being worked on. Okay, so this is still a work in progress. And when you come to look at this sampler, you'll see there's only 2 drop downs. So you have very little control over the image being generated. But that could be a good thing if you're new to ComfyUI and you're struggling with all the settings and things. So we'll run through this and see what we get. And just some notes here on how to install the nodes. I'm going to show you how to do it via ComfyUI Manager. And there's some extra notes here on how to get a preview via the sampler, but we can do that in Manager as well. So let's just come back up to the top here to look at this image, because this is very useful. So whilst, as I said before, there isn't a lot of detail in the nodes, and the reason that possibly is because this picture here is so well detailed. So this gives you a good visual display of how the nodes and where the nodes are set up, and you can clearly see the connections for them. So this is a very useful reference point if you're using these nodes. So anyway, let's move on now and look at how we can install Chibi Nodes and then how we can find them to bring them onto our workflow. So to install Chibi Nodes is very easy. All we need to do is come down to ComfyUI Manager, select that, come across to the center pane and select Install Custom Nodes. Do that. Up on the top right hand corner, we have a search, and all we need to do is type Chibi. So CHIBI, press return, and that will take you directly to the Chibi nodes. So do an install and restart of ComfyUI and you're ready to go. But also note here, before you do that, we have here a link that will take us to the GitHub page that I showed you previously. So there are two ways of doing that. You can either, if you want to find that page, use this, or I will put a link to the page in my comments as well. Let's close out of this. Now, before I close down this page, let me just show you two things I wanted to highlight. We mentioned earlier that you can have a preview screen in your K-sampler or in the sampler that we're using today, which is a simple sampler. And if you want to have a preview in your sampler, just come to this first pane here, go to the third drop down, which is preview method. And if you select TAESD slow, that will give you a nice preview image for your sampler. Now, below that, we have the fourth drop down is called the badge. Now, if you select nickname from that, that will give you labels on all the nodes that nodes that you have installed. And so you can see here for each of the nodes that you can see, there is a label confirming that these are Chibi nodes, with the exception of this one here, which is a standard node. So the standard default ComfyUI nodes have an icon of a little flower. Maybe it's a tulip, I don't know, or a busy Lizzie. I'm no good at flowers. However, but if you want to switch that on as well, this can be quite useful, particularly if you're using workflows that were created by other people and you're not quite sure how many different authors have contributed to that. So that's quite a useful thing to use as well. But anyway, so if you want to add the badge or nickname, that's how you do it. So let's now close out of this. And let's now look at how we can install these nodes onto our workflow. So all we need to do is we right click and select add node. And then if you come down, we will find the Chibi nodes. And then if we left click into them, you go through, we've got quite a few nodes to go through. Most of them are on the workflow that I have created here, but not all, but just run through and install what you want to install. So that's where you find the Chibi nodes. So let's just come out of that and let's get ready now to move on and have a quick look, a quick run through of my workflow. Okay, so let's run through my first group here, which is the Chibi text to image. So starting off here on the left-hand side, we have a Chibi loader. I've selected Stable Diffusion XL as my checkpoint for this. There's a built-in VAE, so I'm going to stick to defaults where I can, and I'll tell you if I'm not. So I'm using the included VAE. I've left the stop clip at -1 default, and I've gone for my typical image size of 768x1024. So that's my latent size image. And here we have the batch size. Now this, as I mentioned earlier, on occasions would not work with the file name, which will come over when we look at the save images node in a moment. So I'm going to stick to just one image. But if you wanted to use the batch size, more than one, then under the save images, choose timestamp and you should be okay. Choose anything else and you may not get a successful result. Okay, so we've set our size of our latent, batch size to 1. Moving across, we have a Chibi prompt box where the positive and negative prompts have been added together. So that's quite nice, quite handy. I've put in, just to give it a bit of variation, I've added in a Lora, just really because I'm so limited with the K-sampler, and we'll look at that in a second, that I wanted to have a bit more control over what I was generating. So I just put in a standard load Lora, the default one, and that sits between the loader and the prompts. Okay, moving on. So from the prompts, let's go next to the simple sampler. So as you can see, there are only two drop downs. You can, if we look at this sampler, we only have 4 choices there to make, and one of those is an LCM. So I'm going to stick with the normal EULA. And down here, there are 2 modes. There's a text to image and there's an image to image. But I don't think this image to image works yet. I tried doing it, setting up a little setup, but I couldn't get it to work successfully. Mostly because I think I can't control the denoise. There's nothing here. So I couldn't get any results. But so we're going to go with text to image. But as I said earlier, if you are new to this and you're struggling with all the options, this is quite easy, quite handy. You just select the sampler, go for normal EULA, and you've got your prompt. You stand a good chance of getting some results. So moving across to the save images, as mentioned, go timestamp for now. I put in a fixed file name there of Chibi to prefix, but that didn't work, and that's all linked to the same issue, I think. So we're almost ready to go. You can add a Chibi text box if you like to this node, to this save images node, and that will actually confirm what your file names are. So that's quite nice. Coming back a bit, back to the K sampler, or to the simple sampler, should I say? Nearly forgot to mention. So we have, there's nothing here in the sampler for controlling the seeds, etc. That's in separate nodes. So we've got a seed generator here where you can have a fixed or random seed. I'm going for fixed, and I'm going for my usual 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now you don't have to, but if you want to, you can add another Chibi text box, and that will confirm what your seed number is, because it's a bit weird generating lots of images and you don't see anything showing you what your seed number is. So that's quite handy. You can just add a little text box to the text link there. So that's quite handy. Down below here, this is not connected to my setup, but we do have, and it's worth mentioning this because these are quite good. We've got a node here for adding a wildcard into your prompt. So I'm going to look at that separately in just a second. So that's really the setup now for text to image. So before we go on and attempt to generate an image, let's just very quickly go on take a look at the Chibi wildcards. So what is a wildcard? Well, a wildcard really is a text document which you can create and add a list as large as you like, really, of words that can be then called upon and randomly generated within your text prompt. So to give you a for instance, if I wanted to generate an image of a futuristic kitchen with and then put in my wildcard phrase, which would be, in this case, a household object, which is gold plated. That would then, when we generate the image, it would go through the prompt. It would see the text for the wildcard, which is the __wildcard__. It would then run off and find the file, which has to be in a specific location, and it would at random pick one of the objects in that list and then try to generate an image with that. So let me show you where the files are if you want to use a wildcard. Before that, let's just have a look at what we got here. So on this example that we're seeing here, the text file is called household objects. And for me to call that up, I would need to copy that line there into my prompt. So the files we need, if we come to our Windows Explorer, go into ComfyUI, we need to be in Comfy Nodes. we would need to find our Chibi nodes somewhere. Here we go. So we go into our Chibi nodes folder. Once there, we've got the extras. If we go into the extras folder, you can see here we've got a folder called Chibi wildcards. If we go into that, we can see here all the wildcard text files that have been previously created by the author. Now, we were looking at household objects a moment ago, so let's just have a quick look at that. So we can see here there are a lot of household objects, and the wildcard text within our prompt can call for any of these words to be called forward, and that's what would be generated in the image. Do bear in mind that occasionally it can call up, because it's doing it at random, it may call up the same word more than once. So that's basically what wildcards do. So let's just come out of this. Now, it's worth mentioning, I think, I did try using this in a prompt, in this setup, in this workflow, and it didn't work for me. What I got was, it did do wildcard node did work. It did call up an image of whatever was selected. However, it did seem to ignore the rest of the comments in the prompt. So I was trying to create an object in a futuristic kitchen, which was gold plated or dripping in gold or something, just to see what would happen. And all I was actually getting was the household objects, and no attention was paid to anything else in the prompt. That may have been the way I was doing it, or it may be something wrong within the nodes. I'm not sure. I did look back at the author's example of the wildcards, and in his prompt, he only said, show me a photo of, and then the wildcards. So there was no complicated prompt there either. So I'm guessing this may not be a great node to work with. However, it might be just me. I'm just not sure. Anyway, let's move on now. I'm just going to deactivate the groups that I don't want, and I'm going to deactivate the Lora. And let's try generate an image with the text to image with the Chibi nodes. Okay, so I've deactivated the groups I don't want, and I've deactivated the Lora as I mentioned. So let's try to generate an image and see what happens. So come across here and qprompt. So we can see here now that whilst the simple sampler is doing its thing, we can see that already that we've got confirmation here of the fixed seed number that has been issued to the image that we're generated. You may notice, although this wildcards isn't connected, because we've generated, it still will randomly select a word. So had this been set up, it would have tried to add a kitchen sink into the image, however. And what we should see once this is finished on the case sampler, hopefully we'll get a file name in the text box as well. Notice here on the case sampler, no CFG, no steps. There's nothing I can do to really manage how this image may look, other than perhaps to change the checkpoint model if I didn't like the image, or I can bump up or down the seed number. There's nothing else I can do. I can't look at CFG or steps. That's not available to me. So we get what we get. Okay, so we have our image and the file name was confirmed in the text box, so that's good. So let's just open up this image, have a quick look, see at what we've got. Okay, so the image is 768 by 1024, which was what I wanted. I don't quite like this little thing of hair here. It looks like an ear when you see it in in the preview, but the image itself is not very bad, so it's done its job. So I should have mentioned when I said I can't really make many changes, but I could of course also have made slight changes to the prompt as well. So I could have changed the model, could have changed the prompt, could have changed the seed. But I don't think there's much else I could change. So let's just do another run through of this setup, but introduce a Lora. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to re-enable this, so select bypass, and I'm going to choose what we're on Lora retro. Let's do something else. Let's do let me just find, I'm going to select the Metropolis movie style Lora, and for me to use that Lora I need to know what the trigger word is for that Lora. So I need to go to the page for that in Civet AI, which I just happen to have over here. So this is the page for this Lora. If you wanted this Lora, you just download it from here. I'll put a link to this as well. The Metropolis movie style SDXL Lora. But what I'm looking for at this moment in time is there are a bunch of trigger words that I can use here. And I'm going to use, I'm going to use Art Deco and see what we get. So I'm just copying that word, coming back to my comments. I always add my trigger words on a new line, just so they stand out a little bit more to me, because I keep forgetting to add them and remove them. And we are on the well, you can't see that too well. Let me just pull that, make that a bit easier to see. There we go. So yeah, so Metropolis, I've given it a strength of 150 and 1.5 on the clip. And let's just do a quick run through again. So the prompt is staying the same, except I've added in the trigger word now, which is Art Deco. Let's try and Q prompt. Although I have kept it as fixed seed, we will get possibly a different image, because I have changed the configs up by introducing the Lora into this setup. It is a completely new picture. And you can also see here with our wildcards, we would now get a picture frame if we were using this wildcard. So there we are, the image with the Lora added. It doesn't look like it's going to be a keeper, but let's open it up anyway. Yep, don't like the image, but we can clearly see that the Lora has taken effect. So I'm not happy with that image. It's not going to be keeping that. So quite likely I would like to generate something a bit different to that. And the quickest way for me to do that now, really with the limited options I have, is I could bump up the fixed seed. So let me bump up. So I'm now on 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, or I'm going to be. I'm just going to regenerate and just see if we finish off on this bit with a slightly nicer image. Would be nice, but if we don't, it is what it is, and we'll move on. So let's Q prompt for the last time on this. Okay, so there we go. Let's just open this up. A little better than the last one, I think. Okay, so yeah, it works. So let's move on. I'm going to deactivate this group now by selecting Set Group Nodes to Never. Everything in this group box is now deactivated. I'm going to activate the resized nodes group by doing the same. So set group nodes to always. And we're now ready to take a quick look at this, this group. So to resize an image using the Chibi nodes, we only really need 3 nodes. We need the load image extended. We need the image simple resize node, and we need the save images node. Now, the other 2 that we have here, I've got a text box and an image size info. We don't need them, but they are quite handy. So the image info output here, by adding a text box to this is quite handy because this will give all the EXIF data on this image and will display it for us. So we can copy and paste that into a prompt if we wanted to. So that's going to give us all the settings. It's going to give us the prompt, the CFG, how many steps, what model was used, etc., etc. So this is really quite useful to have that out of the way. Quite like it. Also, we've got this node here, which is the image size info, and that's just going to confirm what is the size of this image. So as soon as we execute this image, that should populate with what is the size of the picture. I have set the image simple resize to resize my image to 3712 on its largest edge, and we'll check that happens when we run this. So let's give this a go. Again, using the timestamp because I had some issues before, so sticking to the timestamp. So let's run this through. This is the same. I did a video recently on image resize using this Chibi node. So this is really just another run through the same thing, except we've added these extra couple of useful info boxes here. So let's give this a go. Q prompt. And very fast. So first of all, we've got all the info on my donor image here, and that can be very, very helpful, particularly if you want to make some changes to this image. You could then work that into the prompt, start again. Below that, we can see here now that this image, this donor image, is 1024 by 768. Hopefully we've changed that now. We resized it using this node here, the 3712. So let's open this up just to confirm that. And we can see that it is 2784 by 3712. So we've got our resize. So that's nice and easy, works very well. Very happy with that. Okay, let's finish off on a couple of other things that we can do to images using these Chibi nodes. So to finish off, just a couple more nodes that are worth taking a look at. The first is image add text. There's quite a nice little node where we can add some basic text to our image. We have a choice of fonts that we can use. We can select the font size. We have a number of colors that we can choose. Invert mask, not quite sure what that does. And the position X and the position Y are important. So the position X will move your text or set your text from left to right, wherever you want it. And position Y obviously will be up and down. So you have to mess about with these to find exactly where you want your text. So just generate an image, put your text in, generate an image, and see where it ends up, and then start tweaking the X and Y attributes to get it exactly where you want it. I'm not quite sure what this width and height does. I don't think it's the actual height and width of the lettering, but I'm not sure. But anyway, so I didn't spend any time on that. So let's try and generate a little bit of text on this image just to quickly show you what it does. I'm going to just disable this one for the moment. We'll bypass the next node. And again, we'll output an image. And again, I've used timestamp. And hopefully we'll get this image, bit of text. I wanted it towards the bottom, and we'll give that a go. So let's Q prompt. And straight away, we've got our result, and that works fine. So Would be quite nice if we were able to rotate the text or even make it vertical, but yeah, it's quite nice and it works. So let's move on to the next one. So let me enable that one. I'm going to disable that one to get rid of the text. Bypass that one now. So on this node, the image tool, we've got a couple of things that we can do. We've seen them, well, I've seen them on other nodes, and I've got other packages that do similar things, but you can rotate and mirror and flip your image, but it's quite nice. So let's just do, if we do a mirror, so if we want to mirror that image, click on true and generate it. We've switched off the text now, so the text should disappear, and the chap, our gentleman there, should be now facing the other way slightly. So let's Q prompt and see if that works. There you go. We can flip if we needed to. Let's flip it as well. Wouldn't work in this context, but just to show you that it'll do it. So it's fine. You can also, let me just change that because it's odd. You can also rotate your image. So if we wanted to, let's select, I'm going to rotate it by 50 and it will rotate to one direction. And by rotating the image, we are going to create some background. So we can choose a background color for the bit of background that we will see. So let's go for white. So let's rotate this by 50 and see what happens. Q prompt. And there you go. And so you see, so we got the white background now. If I wanted to rotate it the other way, then I would have put it -50. And that's about it. So just to sum up, I've had quite a bit of fun playing around with these. I did find the simple sampler just a little too simple for my likes. I couldn't control the images enough for me. But as I said earlier, somebody just starting may find this a nice little starting point with less options to have to think about. I couldn't get the wildcards to work for me in any useful way. I certainly do like the image resizing and the getting the text from the donor images. That's quite good. The little tools for mirroring and flipping, etc., and adding text are all good stuff too. So yeah, for a set of nodes still in development, I quite like this set. So there you go. Anyway, so I think that's about as much as I've been able to find out about these nodes. So I'll call it a day there, and just leaves me to say thank you very much for your time. I do appreciate it. I hope you found this useful or interesting, and hope to see you at the next one. Have a good day and goodbye.